everyone. Thanks for joining for this episode of Tea with Thence. Today, we have Ankur Salvana with us. Ankur is a design leader at Tata Neu, and he's also an improv coach. And we'll talk a little bit about that as well. But here, we're here largely to discuss about his journey as a design leader and all the things that he's kind of seen in his very expansive career and talk about all things product as well. And I'm Prabhasa, Chief Business Officer at Thence, and here we are. So, Ankur, welcome to Tea with Thence.
Thanks, Prabhasa. Thanks for inviting me. As I said, I was looking forward to this conversation. So, hoping that it's engaging and entertaining for people watching as well.
I'm sure it will be, because the first time we spoke, it was supposed to be a quick catch-up that we were both getting into, and then we extended it up for almost close to an hour. So there's many things that I think we can talk about, all the community will be relating to as well. The first thing that I wanted to lay the context to our viewers, right? Like your journey as a design leader, because you've been here when design was very different to what design is today. And if you could just maybe briefly walk us through what that journey has been, and then we kind of double click on each of those parts and certain themes that I know you and I very well resonate with.
Sure. So hindsight is a very interesting thing. So I would like to look back and say things were connected. I could see it happen, but it didn't really work that way. I would have been an MBA student. I would have gone into marketing at some point of time had it not been for NID. So my visit to NID and my subsequent admission at the National Institute of Design really changed the course of my life, I would say, especially the career. I was studying before that. All through the school, I was studying. I was a good student, but I didn't know at that time that I wasn't being myself. It was only when I reached NID and suddenly had this world where for the first time I felt I was being myself. I was so driven into doing things where which otherwise in studies my father had to drive me. There needed to be a drive. But for the first time, I didn't need anybody to drive me. I didn't need any motivation from any external source. And I think that's what just changed the course of my life. And I realized that creating things for people, bringing in innovation while doing that is what I want to do in life. Was very excited to be there. All of us, like all of the students, were very different. Nobody wanted us to be the same way or do things the same way, which is very different from, say, schooling again. Schools now have changed, thankfully. My daughter is in 6th standard and now I see the curriculums very changed. They're very project-oriented, very problem-solving oriented, which should have been the case in our times as well, but sadly wasn't. So that is what I really feel that changed my life's course. After that, I joined Honeywell as my first organization, where I started with some design research as a main forte. Worked across different fields in Honeywell in product design, UX. Kept working through different organizations like Philips, Samsung. I wanted to work in startups as well. So worked in a startup called Round Glass Partners, where we were a venture fund. I was consulting to a lot of small startups, helping them grow in design. Then I joined Amazon to see, what is it all about. It was such a curious thing. It was very important for me to look at, how processes drive an organization. And Amazon was a great example of that. Touched Zomato for a brief while. Again, one of the best apps of our country. It was great to be there for a while. And then OLX, where I set up the design team, the design studio. In Samsung also, I set up the design team, set up the studio. And then I'm currently with Tata Neu, where again, it's a similar profile where I'm trying to set up a design team, studio culture, and looking at various aspects of design, including research, UI, UX. Yeah, that's been the journey. It's been 17 years, and we started with visual design as being the designer's thing to do, and then now here we are in the world where design thinking is almost an abused word right now, but it's overused. But it's really from visual design to design thinking. It's been a great journey to see how things have changed.
I must say that if you will indulge me, the rhetoric that comes to my mind when I hear your journey is there something that Ankur hasn't done design-wise, right? Because from startups to the who's who, of course, and the names that you called out, right? And from large enterprises to the nimble ones that we were discussing about. And from the days of visual design to being design thinking powered and what design is being made up to be today. And of course, that is an important topic of discussion for us, which is the dichotomy of design that we always catch ourselves in as design leaders, but we'll come to that. But if I were to summarize, at the end of Ankur's design career, if there is a headstone, Ankur hasn't done nothing in design, right? Or Ankur has done everything in design. That I think would be, what the headstone has to say. Because 17 years, not a short time, but the expanse is what is, I think, really the takeaway there, right? Because a lot of people have another part of their journey where they would focus. And, I know people in my first circle who have been part of an organization and have been part of that for a very, very long period of time. That's one kind of journey. Whereas the versatility and the exposure that you've had, I'm sure that there are so many things that today you can look back on today, like you said, and say, okay, now it all makes sense. So any which way, you spoke about the current stint at Tata Neu, and congrats on that new revamp that's doing the rounds and has been receiving rave feedback from everybody. But what's it like, right? Just a quick pulse of what it is to work in one of the first successful super app concepts in India, if I would say. I know China has been ahead of us for some time, but here we are today trying to achieve that with our own large houses, right? Or large house of companies. What is that like?
Thanks for your kind words, Prabhasa. You're very kind with your words. I think we're not successful yet, I would say, but we are on the right path. Because if somebody can create what we're trying to create, it can happen only with Tata. At least in India, I don't see anybody else having the heart, the money, and the connectedness with India that Tata brings on the table. So when I got this opportunity, I grabbed it with both hands because I realize it's a once in a lifetime opportunity. You don't get to create a super app for a country like ours with a brand like Tata. So which touches our lives anyways in so many ways, every day. So it's very exciting. It's very tough because we are looking at bringing experiences from a grocery platform, which is Tata Big Basket, to a medicine platform, which is 1mg, to say a Chroma, which is electronics, and so on, and jewelry and watches. And how do you bring all of it together? And do we need to create a single experience for everything? These are the questions that we have been grappling with. And we have come with some answers where we think that we call it the design unsystem, that we don't want to create a system. We want to create an unsystem, not create rigidity, which stops us from experimenting and giving right experiences for right areas. So so I feel the opportunity is very exciting, and it's very difficult to get the experiences right, and the journey has just started. So very excited about where we are right now. A good strong team has been built now, and we feel that we are just moving the right pace.
Good to hear, and good to hear about the counterintuition. To kind of look at it from a very different dimension and perspective is often where innovation stems from. But this counterintuition or counterintuitiveness is a very thin line to walk, and it's especially at your position in the organization as a design leader, you have to be able to kind of calibrate where that line is walked, right? Because while yes, there has been a change in the perception of design from where perhaps when you first came to design to what it is today, there is a dichotomy of design value, right? What do we mean by that, or what do I mean by that? What is apparent as design value sometimes not, and what is supposed to be not so much design and is brushed off, right, is actually a lot more important today. And given the context of a particular organization, of course, and that organization's design maturity. But in most large Indian brands, design is still an upcoming theme. I'm sure everybody understands design, they appreciate design, but to be able to relate design to business, which is where you come in as that bridge, I think it is still gray area, right? It is still an area that needs walking off of the fine line, if I may say so. But can you talk to me about what this means in the context of Tata Neu, right? Or any large organization. You've been with many organizations, so it could be with anybody for that matter.
No, we can generalize it because it's the same.
Yeah.
See, the good thing is that I think everybody is curious, even at the CXO levels, the leadership levels, they're very curious about design. That is for sure. Even if they do not know what we can do, what extent we can reach out to, what are the real values that we bring on the table, there is curiosity. Otherwise, we would not be, there will be no design leaders. The fact that there are design leaders currently, there are CDOs, there are vice presidents, and in different companies, you can see everywhere designers having these roles. The fact that we have these roles is that the industry is curious. Either they've understood the value that we bring on the table, which I feel is customer centricity at the heart, innovation are the real values that we bring on the table. Aesthetics is still something that people feel that we will definitely bring. So the understanding is that getting a design team or a designer on board will definitely improve the aesthetics of my products. That's the direct, tangible value that I'll get out of them. But there is curiosity about the other things. So what I have learned through my experience is that let's not jump to the second or the third part very quickly, because if there is something which we can take as the first opportunity to clean up, let's do that. Okay, you brought me for 3 different reasons. You are very clear about one. Let me give you that first, because that is something that no other team can bring. Definitely, there is no other person in the organization who can do UI, for example, who will do motion graphics. It is only the design team who can bring that skill set. And let's embrace that, because that is what we definitely bring on the table. So let's do that. So that is what I generally do, improve the design systems, take it to the next level, where first, the basic tick mark is done. Yes, the cleanup has been done. The company's aesthetics have moved on to a different level altogether. We have established ourselves as a core and important member of anything that happens in the organization. That gives us a fundamental standing. And from there on, we need to move into different areas. So I also have a framework which I call as support, improve, and ignite. So support is support, give support to whatever is in motion. Improve is improve the aesthetics, improve the features, improve the product. But ignite the organization is my ultimate aim. If a design team cannot ignite finally an organization through its brainstorming sessions, through different deliverables, which really, a research report can change an organization. So we need to look at our design deliverables after we have established ourselves as a core player into different realms. Again, I feel design thinking is an abused word right now, but I would call it more like the culture of customer centricity and innovation is what we can drive after we've established ourselves. So it's like step 1, do it very well. Step 2 and 3, force your way into it after you have done the step 1. So that's how I look at it, how to bring more and more value from a design point of view.
No, it's a very important point that you make, for the reason that sometimes, especially, let's say, young designers, but also perhaps the entire design community, the entire design hierarchy, we're eager to jump to step 2 and 3, right? Because we have been constantly fed with that notion of the real value of design. And we would have seen this on social media, right? Design is not how it looks, but how it works, right? Now, while I understand the sentiment and I echo that, yes, that's our end goal. That's what we are working towards. It is a bit misleading and dilution in this to kind of take away that first sense, which is design is not how it looks. Of course, it is how it looks, right? And to take that away is to kind of diminish ourselves in some sense. And the appreciation for that and the acceptance of that is so crucial. To say, yes, I would love to do step 3, and that's what we want to get to. But we start with step 1, and then step 2 as well. Like you said, the improve part is perhaps where you're categorizing this, but step 1 and 2. And I think a lot more of the design community has to come around to this concept, wherein today I feel that there is a certain distancing because we feel it reduces our value when we say we are about how it looks. It's a very contrarian viewpoint that you have put across today, but I think it's a one that has to become mainstream, right?
It's a very practical view, Prabhas, that I'm taking, because you see, that's the skill that I have very clearly. It's like, I don't want to say it's bread and butter, but it's like, it is very clear. There is no denial of that fact. Nobody else in the organization can do it better than you. So why don't we just do it? Do a very good job of it. Create a design system which is world class. A design system which caters to the kind of users. And there's so much to do within visual design and interactions and motion. The world is motion graphics, right? If the world is not moving, the world is not patterns today, it's not happening. Gone are the static applications. Look at how the world is moving in. I'm a big proponent of motion graphics, for example. What is your story of motion graphics? So there's so much to do within visual design. And what happens when we demean visual design? We lose a lot of great talent in visual design also. Very soon, all the UI folks want to do UX only. That's companies start paying UX more. And all this is, I think, unnecessary. We need to have respect for great visual designers. One single great visual designer can bring such a nice, culture of visual design within an organization. Think of it like that. So I save these people. I tell them, there are so many people in my teams across different organizations. This is fine. I've done UI this time, but I want to do UX. I really want to do UX. And I'm like, do UX. Great. That's like expanding horizons. And we should all do that. I do research as well. Why not? Do research, do UX, do everything. But why are you leaving UI, or why are you leaving something which you're so good at? And that's where I get perplexed. So what I make sure is there is no difference in salaries. In fact, if there's a great visual designer, I'm ready to pay much more, because that guy will bring in style. That guy will bring in his or her own style, which not normal UI designers can bring, right? So I think we need to understand the importance and give its due where it's definitely there. So that's my view on it.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, like you were just pointing out, sometimes I think it is the reason for moving into that is, of course, the benefits that come along with such a shift, but also the characterization, right? And also the putting on the pedestal for other things of the other roles, which kind of says, okay, am I not good enough? And I think as design leaders, it's on us, like how you have been doing very righteously, to say, no, that isn't the case. And this is how I will walk the talk on that, right? But let's come back to that design value or demonstration of design value to design leadership, right? And just to wrap up that particular topic. You did speak about how it is a 3-step process that you have, right? So first, you kind of support what is already there, and you kind of understand, assimilate the system or become part of it. You learn the ropes and all of that. Then you kind of say, okay, let me improve what is there, right? In each of those interventions, you bring that little bit of, okay, let's change this a little, let's change that a little. And maybe that's where visual design becomes very tangible, like you said, right? That improvement is seen. Okay, right? Or this before, after, I know what you're talking about, right? And then comes that design thinking. When does it happen, right? When do you know, okay, this is the phase to move into that, right? Or this is the time to move into stage 3? Because you're in a presentation with your CXOs. When do you know, okay, this is what I need to be talking about today, and this is what perhaps we will come to at a later point in time?
Well, that's something that that I grapple with every day, Prabhasa. That's a very important question. There has to be a tangible moment also. For example, a new release. You have just released, it's successful. So you've gone through the improve phase, and that improve phase is visible in terms of numbers. It's visible in terms of ratings, NPS scores, etc. I think that's the right moment. If you do it just before that, it's a little premature. If you do too late, then you're not riding the right wave. So it's just at the right time when there is a successful improvement phase that you have gone through, where you have tangibly proven that design has added value. It could be simple things. It could be larger things, like your rating has gone from 3.6 to 4.5, whatever, something like that, which is a clear indication of there has been a tangible improvement. I think those are the moments where you should latch on to very strongly, because there is trust in you now. There is understanding that this team is there to provide tangible results, practical, tangible outputs. That is where vision statements, vision videos, speculative design, fictional design, all these are the right moments. And you have to prepare for them earlier, because it is not that in that moment you'll be able to create that video or that vision. It takes time. It takes time to create that vision. So what I do is I generally start from day one only on a parallel track with a very limited bandwidth, with interns, with people who really want to stretch, etc., etc. Finding the right set of people who would like to work on larger statements, and start doing that along with while you're doing all this, because you can't wait for that end moment. There'll never be a time for you to, now you have 2 months, go work on the vision statement. It doesn't work like that. So we have to start from the very beginning and then choose the right moments to showcase what you have been thinking. Ignite, as I say, at the right moment. There is an all-hand meeting and you ask for a 20-minute slot and say, I have a vision for 5 years down the line. Would you like to have a view on it, etc., etc. So we want to surprise people. We want them to say, this is awesome. But we don't want to shock them. So I keep it to a level which is awesome, but not shocking, so that It's not like, yeah, it's a great thing, I don't want to do anything about it. It's a great thing. Wow, they have a vision, they just delivered, and they have a vision for the future. These are the right guys. So that's the kind of placement, I think, and that's the purpose of design leadership in a way, to manage these 2-3 tracks together, find the right moments. And you rightly ask the question, like, what is that right moment? The right moment is a tangible place where you have proven that design has improved the organization, the product in a certain way. Now let's take a futuristic vision of where we can be.
Great, because I saw two things that you were saying there. The right moment to communicate is that tangible improvement, but the right moment to start is today, right? So there are two things that you were talking about. And you mentioned one thing, which is tangible improvement. Let's come to that, because as designers, we have a bittersweet relationship with tangible improvement. Or let's take the underlying unit there, numbers, right? Where the children who ran away from numbers, perhaps, right? Which is why we want to be doing design, but we can't, right? So, and especially with younger designers, again, I take them as our guinea pig for our conversation today. There is this hesitation to kind of be number driven. Either we go overboard in claiming things which shouldn't be the case, because everybody's like, okay, have you been number driven? 90% improvement, right? Like, you got to be realistic and you got to know why you are saying what you're saying. Or we are like, okay, no, I don't know, or I would rather not be a part of that conversation. I would rather say maybe my product guy is the one who's going to look into that. I'm here to kind of look at the softer side of it, right? The more nuanced side of it. And that becomes a very hard place to be, because your identity as a designer is on shaky ground. So this relationship with numbers as designers, your thoughts on that?
So I was also one of them who ran away from numbers. So, but we have to understand what we ran away from versus what numbers the businesses are talking about are a little different. I think it's the most clear for success in a way. You cannot run away from it. So initially in my career also, I was pretty I didn't run away, but I was a little arrogant towards numbers. I was like, I don't need to look at numbers because I'm looking at people. And numbers can be misleading, but people's emotions cannot be. I mean, that was my understanding of it, which is true even now. So for example, there could be a marketing team which runs a campaign for a few days and, really ups the numbers in those times. And based on that, there are some decisions which are taken. That the numbers in a particular category have gone up, we need to focus on that. So the homepage starts deciding to, focus more on those categories other than something else. I'm talking about e-commerce scenario, but that's skewed. That's skewed. So we need to look at numbers in a larger context as well, which sometimes businesses do not look at. So I think there is a definite need of balancing numbers with subjective research, holistic understanding of numbers, not just a point in time understanding of numbers. Saying that we as designers also need to understand that without this, it won't work. It just doesn't work. And we need to embrace it. So for example, in Amazon, at least in the departments that I was in, very little user research as such. There was extreme testing, and which never made me feel that I'm not with the users. So, but the testing was clearly number driven. So there was always A/B for everything that we did. And the good thing was the numbers are very high there. So the moment you experiment with only like 0.01%, you still get a very large response to your designs. So that is where I started embracing numbers into the design process. And once we start doing that, it's actually pretty helpful. So I treat it. So I am still afraid of them. Not afraid. I'm still wary of them when marketing and business tries to push their agenda through numbers. That is where my the design heart and Tina gets up, and I'm like, let me push them hard with the user research, what people are saying, Play Store comments, fighting them with verbatims and emotional stories with numbers so that there's a understanding. But on the other hand, I'm using a lot of numbers in A/B testing for driving design decisions, because a lot of times business, marketing, product will say that why are you doing this? And we might say that we interviewed 30 people and they had this need and we are solving that need. 30 people in the context of millions, it doesn't make any sense. Okay, fine, let's go, let's test and let's do an A/B. Let's figure out the numbers. Let's see how people are responding to it. And that's where we use it. So I think that both the battles that we need to look at, we need to look at numbers more. We need to be not scared of them. There are only few numbers. Ultimately, we don't need to go into analytics. We need to understand the basic matrices. There's 7 or 8 of them. That's pretty much it. I mean, I don't think we need more than that. So let's embrace those, use them when we need it. But when somebody else uses it for driving an agenda, then also we should question it through our understanding and love for the users. I think that's how we need to balance it out.
Yeah, because I remember when we speak about numbers, and generally we speak about it at Thence as well, right? We say there isn't a story numbers can't tell, right? That means numbers is all context. Is it a point in time or is it a trend, and what were the circumstances? Why, what, when, how? All of that has to be taken into consideration before a number is telling a story versus a very different story, right? But at the same time, to be able to be actors in that story and not be on the sidelines, we need to be able to understand what those numbers are supposed to be saying and not saying as well. Otherwise, we have to take what's been told. And as designers, that puts us off in a very different tangent because we're designing for failure if we are not bringing a perspective back, right? And sometimes our perspectives would be, like you said, would be quantitative. Like you said, okay, I also think this is a different way that this could be a different story at play. Therefore, A/B test, and we got to know what was really the case. And could be qualitative as well, right? Because a lot of times numbers are what is happening, not why it is happening, right? That qualitative why often gives us a very different story from what we originally interpreted the data to be. But for all of this, if you say, I'm going to be on the sidelines, then we become actors who are acting on a directive, which isn't something that we have originally thought of or which we can subscribe to. So somewhere I feel, it's important. Sorry, you want to say, add to this?
Yeah. So it's like, Prabhasa, every organization has its own vocabulary. And numbers are very common vocabulary across different organizations. So if you don't understand that vocabulary, it will be just difficult to communicate. We just have to look at it like that. It's language, right? It's the words which the people use to communicate. So if you are sitting on the away from the action, as you said, it's not going to help. We will be alienated. We'll be looked upon as people who are sitting outside. Yes, sometimes designers need to do that as well. We need to create that aura of we're bringing in that something extra, something edgy, something different. But
bringing the soul.
Yeah, but it's sometimes very, very less, very few times, but not every time you need to look at it like that. So again, different philosophies. So I would say numbers are needed. Numbers, we need to embrace it and think of it as a need to communicate than anything else.
Which brings up two topics to discuss. We'll maybe take up the numbers part first, or rather, numbers are traditionally the wheelhouse of product managers. And today, the distinction between product managers and product designers, the latest terminology that we use for ourselves, is also blurring. So where do we draw those lines today from? And where is it a contest and where is it competition and where is it collaboration, right? If there are three distinctions to be drawn, or maybe it is just two, right? So that's one thing that I would want to discuss. The other thing, speaking of or taking away from numbers, is the storytelling part of it. And we spoke about, like you said, that little edge that we bring in, right? And that little oomph factor, the X factor, how that is supposed to be communicated. If we sit and we look broody and we look mysterious, it's not going to work, right? You got to go and you got to tell what you're supposed to be telling so that people can understand what's happening in that little noggin of ours, right? So I want to talk about both of this, but you choose which one first.
Yeah, we'll go with the product manager versus or with the product designer.
Yeah.
By the way, nice segues. Huh? so
I have a third one, but I think I'll be overwhelming you. So hopefully I don't forget about it. But okay, we'll go with what you chose.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, I personally love product managers. So I hope some of them see this as well.
Some of them are Tata News.
but there is a love relationship, and there needs to be this not rift, but there needs to be this
tug of war.
Yeah, this
tension.
Yeah. Where we stand as pure, consumer advocates, user goal driven, and they are coming in with all the business goals in mind. And the perfect way is to create this Venn diagram, beautiful Venn diagram where everything is in the middle, but it doesn't work like that. Whatever you do, it doesn't work like that. Business goals have their own pressures.
That beautiful Venn diagram in between is where the rift happens. because you're stepping on each other's toes. Like, I thought this was my responsibility, but I digress. I should let you complete.
Right. So in some cases, product managers have not worked with design teams so closely. So they have their own notions of what a designer would do. Designers feel that we don't need product managers. we know what to make. So there is this problem. So what we need to do, I think, is educate each other better of what we do. Be much more transparent and involving. If we tell that this is the design process that we follow, these are the 5 steps that we take. In this project, we have this much time, so we might take only 3. And my dear PM, this is what I'm going to do. And this is where I need your help, etc., etc. If that kind of communication is clarified, I think a lot of problems are solved there and then. A lot of problem is in the way designers don't communicate well to the other stakeholders. And they assume that they would understand that we are creating a very big thing, which is not always correct. Not, as I said, not all product designers have seen different phases of design. They might have just worked with a UI person. They might have just worked with a information architect, etc. So they've not been educated properly of the design process also. So I think what I generally do is take that up, even if it's a refresh for product managers, I do it. I tell them what we do. These are the steps that we will take. According to the timelines, the steps might decrease, increase. This is where we feel we need your help. We need your help in creating use cases. We need your help in making the business case alive. We need your case in execution. We need your participation while we are doing research. We need your participation. So we need in these steps, we need your participation. In these steps, we'll need you completely. And this communication, when done, I think they start liking us more. What they don't like is when we work in, we're hiding and working. We'll come back in a week. Then we'll show you the design. Arey, par ek hafte mein ho kya raha hai? Like, what are you doing this week? Can you show me? And designers are very wary of showing things in progress, which is right, which I understand because people start commenting on something which is half-baked. But, don't worry. Even then, show them. It's okay. Show them your dirty stuff. Show them your work in progress stuff. Tell them this is the step where I am at. If you want to contribute in this way, you can contribute. Once we do this, I find most product managers loving designers and really seeing the value in what we bring. Because as we discussed earlier, we bring a certain set of understanding. A lot of product managers feel that they don't need product designers. Wireframes is something that they have also done before. They have used Blastmake or all those tools to create these, and they can directly work with the dev team to create the product. They don't need the design team. So let's understand that there are the specializations now, and everybody is specialized in something. Let's have mutual respect and understand the processes of the two teams. Once that happens, it becomes smooth sailing, mostly helpful, because product designers also bring a lot of energy. Right? They are driven. If we are driven, they are also driven. I look at it that way. And coming from great institutes, if you look at the PMs, they really want to make a change. They really want to do that. So let's not look down upon them either ways, the design or the PM, and respect each other's processes. But one thing is important, that where is design placed? So if design is reporting into product, there can be a problem as well. So I think the placement of design also in an organization has to be at an equal footing, or at a place where the product designer can actually see eye to eye, and there should not be a scenario where people are reporting into each other. Because if the designer is reporting into a PM, then it's a different ball game altogether, right? The designer might not be able to focus on the process that he or she wants to. So that also, I think, is important in an organization. That's a second point, but yeah, that is critical also.
No, very rightfully said, and I'm speaking from experience back home at Thence, right? The hierarchy of reporting for a given practice, we call it practices. So practice of product consulting, or practice of design, or practice of research, right? Even within, I'll take a different example of research and design. In organizations, certain organizations, research reports to design, which I find also a bit of conflict of interest. Design is applied research, but it's not research by itself, right? There is a certain distinction that there has to be, and even within that, we always say, right, the team who has designed it should not be the ones who validate it, right? Even if it is somebody, from design itself extending to research. But I digress. But the point is, like you rightly said, having that practice and its own hierarchy, and not a cross-practice hierarchy, right, is very crucial. Otherwise, we are being influenced by perspectives which are not native to us, right? So it's not questioning our actions with the right context. Therefore, the outputs become very skewed towards the context of somebody else. So I think it's very crucial that that is there, and it's not one above the other. It's just this way, right? And the way I look at it is, product is the glue across all functions, whereas each function is a pillar of its own. Right. So there is one pillar who is facilitating all these other pillars, because then it becomes a mess. Every pillar talking to every other pillar will become a lot more noise than moving forward with rigorous momentum. But each pillar is a pillar of its own, right? So I think it's important that as organizations mature, right, and of course with large organization we would have that benefit of having the resources and the space to accommodate this kind of an org structure. But even smaller organizations and across the board, it's time to kind of identify that there is a reason why we have come to this point where both are required and one cannot be a substitute for the other. But good that you put that point across, because I could see that as I resonate with it in terms of how we have been tackling it. We come to the other point, right, on storytelling. And often we have this thing with design that my design will speak for themselves. Like how, if I were to draw a parallel to the product world, you build a great product, users will come to it. Very, very misleading social media worthy statements, but very different in reality. If you can talk about why storytelling is itself design. Design is not just implementation. Design is not just your screens, but design is actually inclusive or encompassing storytelling. Storytelling is design. And I know you have a very strong opinion on this. So if you can share that with the rest of us.
Sure. And I have a lot of opinions on that. So we need to curtail somewhere. Because I feel that is...
There's a part 2 with you coming up any which way.
Right.
We'll come there.
Right. When I say visual design is like, an entry into the thing, storytelling is cementing it. Storytelling is what can completely change an organization. So that's how important I feel it is. And it is inexhaustible resource for us. We should use it as much as possible. You will never overuse storytelling as a designer. So if I were to advise any young designer, I would say, jitna use kar sakte ho karo, like as much as possible. Now, why? Because see, content is 50%. I agree. It's very important. You have created the wireframes, you have created the visual design, but by itself, it has a life of its own. Yes, but you need to understand the people who are looking at it to invest in it. So let's take it in two parts. People, when your design is not gone out, or and you're projecting your design and you want it to get approved, or you want bring people together to accept the designs. In that moment, you are a performer. In that moment, the audience sitting in front of you is people that you need to understand what and how they would be coming on board to this for this design. And one of the most important tools that we have is storytelling, because storytelling makes, even if you look at the history of storytelling and why storytelling came in the first place, was to help people avoid dangers, to take action. So we are tuned. When we hear a story, we want to take an action. We want to avoid danger. We want to go for the right thing. So this is what a good story does to any person who is hearing a good story. In that moment, after the story is told, the person is ready to take action. So there is a science behind storytelling, and there are different ways. Obviously, I've written about it as well in a couple of blogs. What techniques we can use to tell a good story. How do we start a good story? How do we take it to a problem? How do we solve the conflict? How do we surprise the users? How do we give hope at the end? There's a whole story arc that we need to follow when we are presenting a concept. And when you do that, the people sitting in front of you will react. And that is what you want them to do. You want them to react positively towards it, agree with your story, go along with it. So if you tell the right story, understand your audience, you will get what you want. Of course, with the decent level of content that you have had. If that is very weak, then your story might not help it. But it's coming together of the content and your storytelling techniques together that brings people together. And imagine getting a whole organization together by creating a value proposition for your whole organization. How will you communicate that? I'll give you a small example from, say, us wanting to do only a point in time commerce, which say most commerce applications do, to actually creating relationships with people over a period of time. So they look at us as a relationship versus a transactional platform. That difference is just storytelling. I've just told you a story right now, and you understand that yes, this is a lofty story right now, but there is a story. There is more heart to getting attached to this rather than this. Now, if I go deeper and explain with right content this story, you will go along with me. So that's how strong I feel about storytelling, Prabhasa. That, and am surprised that designers don't spend time on it. We feel that we will show this animation, this will work, and that's it. What about the context setting? What about adding humor to it, adding play to the conversations, getting your body language right, getting your voice right, everything right, and thinking of it as a performance rather than a presentation. It's a performance that we need to perform on stage, get the audience along with you like you're performing, and get them to agree with you on this journey that you are taking. So at least in our team, I always try that everybody gets a chance to present to leaders, to a large group of people. So they quite a and it's I think the heart is usually there. So when they start telling the story, the heart is there. You see the emotions coming out. If we can add a little more techniques to it, it'll just be more wonderful.
I will make a slight observation here, and you have to tell me if this is true or not. Is the secret sauce of Ankur the designer, Ankur the improv coach? Because, no, but jokes apart, right? Because I see how you've been able to bring that very key point that it is not a presentation, it is a performance, right? And that is a universal truth. Whether we as designers, it's a universal truth for humans, right? As storytelling, the start of civilizations, at least the *Sapiens* book, if you've kind of had a read in, right? That's one of the key themes that Yuval Noah speaks about, right? So, and it's so wonderful to hear that you kind of allow the designers in the team to each go on stage and do this performance. And I'm sure there's a bit of that coach coming in where you're coaching them on, where that technique in storytelling has to come in. Therefore, I make that observation. But isn't it so crucial? And how I see this kind of artist side of you, of course, design is also in some sense, which brings me to the next topic that I said I will come to. But there is an almost artist influence, in this case, the art being improv, right? And storytelling, and how that has influenced you as a designer. And how that's something that I see in the example that you were talking about, how you propagate it as well with your team saying, okay, it is not a presentation, it's a performance, and we need to apply technique because design is inclusive of that storytelling that we were just discussing about. So I wanted to understand and peek into that improv bit a little bit and that artist side of you and how that has helped in maybe more specific context. You already did speak about storytelling being important, but maybe in specific context saying, okay, this is why it's so great to have something which is above and beyond design.
Absolutely. Prabhasa, one of the books which influenced me a lot in my life was a book called A Double Life by Alec Padamsee.
Okay.
And as luck would have it, he was the guy who gave me my graduation cloak and certificate as well at NID. Those magical moments which just happened. And while I was reading, I was in school and I read about him and I realized that he is the father of English theatre in India, in a way. So he started most famous English theatre group in Bombay, and then he was also the Lintas guy who actually created a lot of legendary advertisements. And he always had this influence of theatre coming in into his advertising industry, his life there, his work there. And it wasn't planned for me, but maybe I follow him and maybe I follow his footsteps in some ways. And I see that happening with me as well. So I started initially doing theatre. Then I started doing improv, which is a lot to do with the interaction with the audience. So there is no art form where you interact with the audience so much. Because in improv, what happens is you create stories and suggestions based on what people have said to you, audience. So you include them. And I just loved it. I was like, yahi to karna hai. This is what we need to do. While we are presenting a design, while you're presenting a concept, we have to make sure that they are with you. And how do you involve them in the right moments? How do you make sure that they feel that it's their story as well? Which is what improv does. It tells it tells the audience your story, but through us in a way, and they all become connected in that moment. So it's a very special feeling that everybody has. Another important aspect is around team building versus ensemble creation. So when we go in improv, we go always as an ensemble, which is like a collection of people who stand together or fail together. We have a manifesto, we have a aim, objective, which is for us, which is not for individuals. Now, this is also very interesting because as a design team, if we have a manifesto, if we have, and this is also what we try to do, at least again, where I try to go as design teams, I try to create what is our objective? What are we going to do as a team in this organization? 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, so that everybody has a similar kind of vision and we have each other's back. Can we bring in that kind of a feeling that if you fall down on stage, I'll go and take and help you out. I'll not let you look stupid on stage. So that's one of the feeling that we have in improv again. Can we bring that feeling again in our work? If there's a designer who is presenting, for example, or who's doing something, he's not able, can I go in like a ensemble member and not like a colleague? There's a difference between a corporate colleague and design teams can at least go that extra mile. We have empathy for the user. Do you have enough empathy for your own team member? And that is again which made improv very special for me because I could see these parallels. So there are a lot of these parallels, Prabhasa. There's another thing which is in improv, you go two people on stage and you create a scene together. And I say, this is such a beautiful bird. And you would say, I can't see a bird. There will be no scene. But if you say, yeah, that beautiful bird is eating that banana. And then I continue, that banana is so yellow, it's like sun. And we continue the story. So you can only create stories in improv if you're building on each other. So how do we build in that culture of building on each other? We are so negative in a corporate scenario all the time. And because all the pressures that we have, at least in our brainstorming sessions, in our sessions where we are critiquing, sessions where we are looking at building positive, can we actually do a yes and rather than a no but? So that's again something which I really admire about improv and bringing all those things into design. And there's a lot of crisscross happening between the two areas that I work in. I really love that. I love the fact that we can think about users, we can think about audience. Things start mixing up in a very, very interesting way.
One other observation that I was able to draw from what you were sharing about improv is I'm sure improv helps with creating visions, right? Because you are creating from nothing, right? It is pure imagination at work, right? And for those of us who are indulged with whose line is it anyway, I'm sure that there is a lot that is possible with the most mundane of things in front of us. And to be able to see that takes somebody, I think, imagination, but also the novelty of thought, right? And to be able to bring that out.
Yeah, it's also about, I think, a very important aspect is not being afraid to fail, like not being afraid to make a fool of yourself. I think a lot of this thing, and this is why half of creativity of people is gone, because they don't want to look stupid. They want to look smart. Everybody wants to look smart while they're speaking, while they're in a group. What I encourage is, please be stupid. Please be average, but speak. But be there. Be you, and you can only be you when you've taken that whole thing of failure away. And I think that's also very, very critical.
Again, another learning from improv, right? Because there you're supposed to make a fool of yourself so that the audience gets to live that moment. But speaking of improv and speaking of artists, design has this, again, you have this dichotomy. We come back, a full circle, where design is for users and is not so much about yourself. Whereas artists, on the other hand, it is in some sense an extension of you, your soul, and what you birth to the world as your art. So you can make it about you, and you don't have to worry too much about who sees it and how they take it. It's your story, right? And it's a very tough line to walk, because as designers, I know, and I've been guilty of this, and this comes from personal experience, right? You're married to your design. I put my heart and soul into this, and therefore it is the right design. But as I've grown in design, I kind of have realized that it is important to be married to the outcome and not that specific solution. So it's easier for me to let go. And the parallel that I give is, we have to stop being artists and start becoming people who are looking to bring out the solution. Where our art is in creating the solution, not in that particular solution, right? If I can very loosely word it. But I know you have a different take on this. And I'd like for us to debate on that, or at least I'd like for us to hear what your take on this is.
It's not so different, Prabhasa. I just feel that out of our different job profiles that we are giving to ourselves, if we say one of my jobs is to remain an artist and create the visions as well, if I take it as one of the KRAs that I have, then you don't feel bad when the visions are not accepted. Because as the nature of the job is, visions will not be accepted. There'll be only one vision maybe in your life which will get accepted. But that vision will be enough to last a lifetime. So, it's like that. So it's like lottery in a way, in a very vague sense, that you're playing lottery every time. And of course, you can't get attached to a lottery result. But if that one time you really get it right and everything falls in place and the vision is successful, you will be changing the lives of millions of people. And what greater joy would there be than that? So I treat it like that. I treat it like, one of my jobs is to remain an artist, is to keep doing this thing which never goes anywhere, which is fine. So a lot of youngsters get disappointed because, what happens is that those projects, not everything is what I do. I get it done through my team members. And sometimes your team members would have gone through 4 months doing this vision project where nothing has happened. And they'll be like, and you feel bad at the time because, they're doing it in a way for you. And that just adds into a little bit of guilt there. But what happens is that even those deliverables have a life of their own. They will come back sometime. And I've seen a lot of good work comes back. Sometimes 3 years later, CEO would call you and say, "Yaar, तूने वो concept बनाया था ना एक बार?" I was like, "अभी बोल रहे हो?" अभी वो concept बनाया, उसका video है क्या? Just can you send me a video of that 3-year-old concept that you did, 4-year-old things that you made? And so I keep telling the team that don't worry, if it's a great deliverable, if it's a great story, it will come back. It will have its, and if nothing, it will ignite the organization in different ways that you can see. But make a good quality deliverable, a deliverable which will last the realms of time. So even if it's opened after a time capsule and they see it, it will be like, what a great vision that these guys created. Let's take this part of it. Let's take that part of it, or let's just see it, get inspired. So I think that's very critical to keep that part alive. And as you said at the start, the dichotomy of it, this is again something that you can bring at the right time, this art, because that will come across as something which nobody else has really thought about. So I think it's not entirely different from what you're saying, but it's just that let's keep doing it and it'll see the light of the day.
No, I think you articulated the emotion that I was trying to clarify when I would make this statement, that when you operate as an artist, you are often allowed to be not disappointed. Whereas when you operate as a designer, you often get disappointed because you're operating as an artist. So I think the key word there is, it's okay if you want to be an artist, but don't get disappointed if it did not achieve what it wanted to achieve. Because as long as it is good work, like you very rightfully said, if nothing else, it has enabled you to take yourself to the next level. Obviously, all the other things that you said are true, right? If it's good, it will come back, right? Because obviously, right? You've done something that then it's in the back of your mind. You will pull it up in that next instance where that's the solution for something that you've already thought through. Or like you said, it's good, you put it across to somebody else will, it's improv, right? Oh, I saw something, now it's my story and I build on top of it, right? And if nothing else, it has allowed you to take yourself to that next level. So not being disappointed, I think, is the feeling that we are both trying to communicate with observations that we were having. But
you already got the joy of creation, right? Ultimately, why did you come into this? You came into this profession because there was this huge joy of creation. These tools that you got, Adobe Illustrator and everything else that you got when you came into this profession, you got this immense pleasure out of creating stuff. Then you saw people using it. You became even more excited about it. Wow, I created something, now people are using it. But don't forget that you came for creating also. I think, and that's where we should be satisfied sometimes, just by the joy of creation. You're in a profession where we create every single day. What a joy.
I remember that. I don't remember who said it. I saw this on LinkedIn. It was I think it was one of the comedians. I hope it's Hassan Minaj. And he was talking about, if this happens, then I'm successful. And then if I go on to the late night show, I'm successful. And then if I get to host so many people, I'm successful. And then he comes back and says, no. I'm here. I'm doing comedy. I've succeeded. This is the win. This is it. I'm doing comedy. This is what so many people want to do. I'm doing it, right? So if you really want to be a designer, you're designing. That is the win. Everything else is the upside.
Yeah. This reminds me of a very interesting thing. So a lot of times this has happened with me. Very, very senior leaders, they would first again think of design as a visual aspect only, and then slowly I would build up my way into their understanding. And they would say, my daughter needs some guidance on career. Would you like to? People then realize that design is such a beautiful career. It's so leaders, businessmen, this, that, whatever. And I've seen this happen multiple times. And can you guide my school going kid about design, because this is so this makes me also realize that we're in a privileged scenario. We should be grateful about the fact that we're in a situation where we are not just number crunching or just doing this or just maybe those are interesting things for other people as well, but you're in a big space. So what you said is awesome. It's like, yes, you are designing every single day. What else do you need?
Absolutely. With that, I have to say that we are very grateful and thankful to have had you here today. And I know this was an intense conversation. And I know, while some of the things that we have, discussed in the past, to revisit these topics is always, there's a new insight, a new analogy, if nothing else, that we draw and say, okay, that's a different way to look at it. But thank you for indulging us, and thank you for spending this last hour of yours with us. We hope to see you, like I said, for a part 2, because I know there's a lot more there. With 17 years under the belt and all the experiences that you have had, there are so many instances that we can talk about. But till then, thank you so much for coming on to Thence.
Thanks, Prabhasa. It was really engaging. I knew it will be engaging, and it was engaging. Thanks.
Thanks, Ankur.